Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Texas Developmental Screening and Surveillance Echo brought to you by UT Health San Antonio in collaboration with the Texas Department of State Health Services. My name is Maria Gutierrez, and I will be facilitating today's session. A few housekeeping items to help with attendance. Please enter your full name, affiliation, and email into the chat. Thank you to everyone who got that started for us. Please do remember to stay muted unless you are speaking. However, we do encourage everyone to use the chat or raise your hand feature to pose any questions or share perspective uh, during the case discussion, but also any questions after didactics. As a reminder, these sessions are being recorded for later distribution. If you are having any connection issues, please privately chat Karen or UT Echo IT for assistance. Lastly, today's session will begin with team introductions, followed by a didactic presentation and a patient case study. We will then move on to breakout rooms for the case discussion and wrap up in the main room once prompted by IT. And as always, to ensure privacy, no personal health information is allowed at any point during the session. This does include names, addresses, birthdays, or any other identifiable information. Let us always make every effort to avoid bias and any stigmatizing terms so we can continue to have a space that is respectful and safe to learn. With that, we'll get started with some team introductions. We have Faith.
Hello, everyone. My name is Faith Rivera, and I'm the CEO and Principal Consultant with Alice Avitas Consulting. I'm excited to hear this great presentation today, and thanks for spending time with us on this important topic.
And thank you, Faith. We also have our didactic presenter, Gabby Lopez. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby Lopez. I am the lead for interagency coordination and outreach with the Early Childhood Intervention Program that works under the Texas Health and Human Services Commission.
Thank you, Gabby. We're so excited to have you present for us. And we also have our case presenting, Julia.
Hi, my name is Julia von Cannon, and I am the director of Promise Land Learning Center, and I'm going to be presenting the case today.
Thank you, Julia. We're also excited to have you present for us today. All righty. Thank you, everyone, for those team introductions. I think at this point, we'll go ahead and give the floor to Gabby. Gabby, you're good to go to share your screen and share all your knowledge with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria, and thanks, everyone. Give me 1 second. I'll be sharing. Okay. All right. Well, I hope everyone's having a great afternoon. Happy Friday. Again, my name is Gabby Lopez. I am the lead for interagency coordination and outreach with the Early Childhood Intervention Program. I work at the state office. So I'm very excited to share more about the ECI program with you today. And I also wanted to highlight what was said earlier that we'll have time at the end for any questions you may have. Okay, so if you don't already know, ECI is a program within the Texas Health and Human Services Commission, and it was created to help parents and caregivers of children from birth to 3 years old who have developmental delays or disabilities. But before we get into this further, just sharing this slide, pause on it for a second as part of the Echo Webinar project. Okay. So this presentation, I'll cover a number of topics. I'll go over ECI in Texas. That includes eligibility, ECI's approach to services, and how to make a referral. I'll also review the ECI transition process, particularly transition from ECI to Early Childhood Special Education, or ECSE, as you'll hear me call it. We'll go over how to locate and contact your local ECI program. And lastly, I'll share resources available from ECI and other organizations. Okay, so as mentioned, ECI provides services and supports to families with children birth up to 36 months of age who have a developmental delay, are deaf or hard of hearing, have a visual impairment, and or have a qualifying medical diagnosis with the need for early intervention services. So in this photo, the ECI provider is demonstrating to the parent how to support his child's development by incorporating therapy into the family's daily routines. They could be working on fine motor skills by pointing to the bubbles, working on oral motor skills by using their mouths to blow bubbles, working on gross motor skills by sitting with support on an uneven surface, working on social emotional skills by practicing joint attention while looking at and talking about the bubbles, or working on communication by having the child sign or say bubble more and all done. And so, although it may look like they're just playing with the child, we know that play is how infants and toddlers learn. Okay, so about Texas ECI. It's a program funded by the U.S. Congress and the Texas State Legislature, and it's authorized through the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA Part C. And that is overseen by the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, and the Texas Human Resources Code, Chapter 73, administered through Texas HHSC. So IDEA is the federal law that ensures educational services and supports are provided for children with disabilities birth through 21. And there are two parts. So Part B provides services to children ages 3 to 21. Part C provides services from birth until the child's third birthday. And local ECI services are provided by programs and communities throughout the entire state. This means that ECI provides services to infants and toddlers throughout all of Texas's 254 counties. And we do that by contracting with what we call subrecipients, their ECI programs. And they are found, they can be a number of things. They can be agencies or organizations, community centers, independent school districts, education service centers, or private nonprofit organizations. And each ECI program must have the capacity to provide the full array of IDEA required services and supports and be able to implement a comprehensive service delivery system. Just a quick note here that ECI programs and service areas can change over time. However, when there is a change, ECI ensures that services are available in every county across the state. Okay, eligibility. So to qualify for Texas ECI services, a child needs to reside in Texas, be between birth to 36 months old, and meet at least one of these eligibility criteria. They can have an automatically qualifying medical diagnosis. So some examples are spina bifida, Down syndrome, or cerebral palsy. They can be determined deaf or hard of hearing or have a visual impairment. Or they can demonstrate a 25% delay in one or more of the 5 developmental domains, which are listed on the next slide. So these domains are cognitive, communication, motor, social emotional, and self-help. The percent delay is determined through a standardized evaluation that will be done at no cost to the family by the ECI program. If the child has a 25% delay or more in any of these 5 developmental domains, they could qualify for ECI services. The exception would be if the delay only occurs in expressive communication, so the way a child uses language. And in that case, the delay will need to be 33% or more. Okay, so there are multiple steps in the ECI process. The first few are referral, first contact with the family, and evaluation. So referral, who can make a referral to ECI? So an important detail to note here is that anyone can refer a child and their family to ECI. You do not need a medical professional or diagnosis. If there is an automatically qualifying medical diagnosis, that will help to move things along a bit quicker, but it's not required. So again, anyone who has a concern about a child's development can make a referral to ECI. And the ones listed here on the slide are our most common referral sources. Okay, so let's quickly talk about how to make an ECI referral. There are 2 main ways to find the ECI program serving children in a family's area. You can use the ECI program search page to enter their zip code, city, or county. You can contact the HHS Office of the Ombudsman at the number seen on the slide. You can select language and then select option 3. And then callers who are deaf or hard of hearing may use the relay option of their choice or dial 711 to connect with Relay Texas. You can also submit an online request that can be submitted by accessing the Make a Referral to ECI webpage. And that's on ECI's homepage, which I'll share later in the presentation. Okay, so if a child is determined eligible, the next step is to develop the child's Individualized Family Service Plan, or IFSP. IFSP will outline the goals the family has for their child, the services to be provided, frequency of visits, and so forth. The IFSP is developed by a team made up of the family, ECI providers, and anyone else the parent wants to include. The teams vary in size and discipline since they're designed to meet the unique goals and needs of each child and family. Additionally, I do want to note here that if a child is enrolled in ECI and they move within Texas, they'll remain eligible for ECI services for their duration of their IFSP. Their current ECI program will transfer the child's records to the new ECI program that will be providing the services. ECI providers offer an array of services to meet children's specific needs, as you can see on the list. Some of the most common types of services provided by ECI are specialized skills training and therapy for delays in communication and physical development. Specialized skills training, or SST, focuses on supporting all developmental domains with an emphasis on strengthening cognitive skills, positive behaviors, and social interactions. Additionally, every child is assigned a service coordinator. Nope. I'm sorry. Okay. Every child is assigned a service coordinator who provides case management. The service coordinators are responsible for connecting families to other community resources that help meet the child's educational, medical, and social service needs. They also ensure families are aware of their rights and coordinate all the services the child is receiving, both from ECI and other providers. Each ECI is unique from other pediatric service providers because of their focus on family-centered services and how we deliver our services. Our service delivery approach reflects current knowledge of infant and toddler brain development and evidence-based practices. One of the main principles of ECI, which is based on extensive research, is that children learn best through everyday experiences and interactions with familiar people in familiar contexts. So, as noted earlier, ECI services happen in children's natural environments. These are places where children are comfortable as they live, learn, and play. ECI providers work as a team with parents and other caregivers to help them integrate developmental activities in a variety of routines. Service visits include parents, siblings, grandparents, family friends, and others as requested by the family, because they are familiar relationships which provide familiar context for the activities and strategies being provided. The goal is to use strategies that enhance rather than disrupt typical everyday activities unique to each family and build those into a routine. An example of this is if a child isn't using as many words as other children their age, the ECI provider can help the caregivers find ways to stimulate language development by naming items they see on walks, having the child name the food they're eating. Oh, I'm sorry. I wonder if this is on a timer. Okay. And so basically, the goal is to use strategies that enhance rather than disrupt. So you can stimulate language development by naming items the family sees on walks, having the child name the food they're eating during meals, and asking the child to describe or name items while grocery shopping or during other activities the family participates in. ECI uses coaching, which is an evidence-based approach to deliver services. It's designed to teach parents and caregivers strategies they can use to help the child during everyday routines and in places the child spends the most time. It empowers the child's caregivers and engages them so they're participating in helping the child to meet their developmental goals. This empowerment is a critical part of ECI's services. Although coaching may look a little different depending on the setting, the coaching elements remain the same. During an ECI visit, the provider will use the 5 components of the coaching approach. First, there'll be joint planning, where the provider will check in with the caregiver to see how things are going and if the strategies are working. They'll make a plan with the caregiver about what to focus on in the visit. Then the ECI provider may observe the child in their typical routines. This gives them valuable information about whether the strategies are effective or if they need modifying. Next, the ECI provider will demonstrate or explain some activities and strategies with the child and ask the caregiver to try them if they're available. The ECI provider may share feedback to make the activity or strategy more successful for the caregiver and child. And then finally, the caregiver and the ECI provider will reflect on how the visit went, what worked and what didn't, and when the strategies could be practiced. And they'll also talk about if the caregiver feels confident in practicing the strategies with the child. As the parent or caregiver knows a lot about their child, parents can also suggest activities that might work. And then towards the end, together the caregiver and ECI provider make a joint plan for what the caregiver can practice until the next visit and what the focus on will be for this next visit, including the best time of day or routine. Oh. Okay. So now that we've highlighted ECI's eligibility criteria, how to make a referral, and the ECI service approach, there's some key timelines related to referrals and service delivery that are important to note due to the requirements of IDEA and the Texas Administrative Code. First, there should be a maximum of 7 days between when a professional identifies a child with possible delays and disabilities and when they make their referral to ECI. Second, Part-C programs like ECI only have 45 days to determine a child's eligibility, the child and family's needs, and to create an IFSP. All ECI services must begin within 28 days after caregivers sign the child's IFSP. And then fourth, transition activities to prepare a child to exit ECI can begin as early as when the child is 27 months old, but must be completed no later than 90 days before a child's third birthday. We'll dive a little deeper into the transition process shortly. But first, I'll highlight the final number on here, which is 36, or the number of months from a child's birth. ECI can only provide services up to the age of 3, so planning for transition starts from the child's enrollment and continues until the child exits ECI. Okay, so now that ECI provides services for kiddos, now that we know that ECI provides services for kiddos up to 36 months, we'll talk a bit more about the final step in ECI, which is transition. So as I mentioned, discussions about the child and family transitioning to the next steps after ECI services occur with the first meeting that the family has with the ECI team. While a formal plan for transition is not developed until the child is at least 27 months old, all IFSP goals are developed with the next steps in mind. Okay, again, a specific transition plan is developed as part of the child's IFSP when the child is at least 27 months old, but no later than 90 days before the child's third birthday. And as part of this transition, ECI assists families in locating settings that will provide future support for the child's developmental needs. It should be noted that though the service team discusses this transition with caregivers throughout the entire ECI process. And if a child is eligible, ECI works with the local educational agencies or LEAs to ensure an appropriate shift into special education services, which I'll go to into the next few slides. But it's important to highlight that the ECI team can support the parent in exploring other settings besides or in addition to schools. This includes childcare, Head Start, homeschool, private therapy clinics, or other possibilities based on caregiver preference or available services. Okay, so the transition plan outlines steps and services to support the child's exit from ECI and transition into appropriate early childhood programs. It helps the family prepare for what comes next as the child turns 3 and gets ready to leave the ECI program. So let's break down the required components of the transition plan. So first, there's transition services, and these are the specific services and activities the IFSP team identifies as necessary to support the child's transition. Examples might include visits to the new setting, joint planning meetings, or developmental supports to prepare the child. Second is transition steps. These are the actions that should be taken to prepare both the child and the family. These include parent discussions and training, so the ECI team talking with families about future placement options and providing training or resources to help them make informed decisions. Child preparation procedures, so ECI staff helping the child adjust to the new environment through activities like classroom visits, social stories, or practicing new routines. And exit planning, so ECI staff ensuring the child is supported in exiting Part C services and entering the new program with confidence. It's important to note here that the transition plan is not static. It's updated as needed to reflect new service options being explored, updated timelines, and any changes in the parents' choices for their child. Although a transition plan is required for every child enrolled in ECI, some of the other required transition activities are dependent on whether the child is potentially eligible for early childhood special education services, or ECSE. When a child enrolled in ECI is 2, the IFSP team determines if he or she is potentially eligible for ECSE. So now I'll shift to discussing both ECI and ECSE in regards to that transition process. So this chart, it's a lot on the slide, so I'm glad you'll be getting the slide deck. But it's very informative. It compares ECI, which we know falls under IDEA Part C, and with ECSE, which falls under Part B of IDEA. So HHSC oversees ECI, and the local education agencies, or LEAs, are responsible for ECSE. We now know that ECI covers early intervention services for infants and toddlers birth up to 36 months, whereas ECSE addresses special education services for children ages 3 through 5. We now know ECI's eligibility criteria. ECSE eligibility must align with IDEA categories and state regulations, and the child must meet the definition of a disability, and the delay must adversely affect educational performance. And here's the key distinction. Just because a child qualifies for ECI doesn't mean they'll automatically qualify for ECSE. The criteria are different, and the child must be shown to meet eligibility criteria for one of the 13 disability categories under IDEA, and also have a need for special education services to make progress in school to be eligible for special education services. This comparison just helps us understand why some transitions require extra planning and communication, especially when families assume services will continue without interruption. And in best practice, this is always the goal. So as we know now, an IFSP outlines the goals of the family enrolled in ECI. In ECSE, the plan is called an Individualized Education Plan, or IEP, which is determined by an Admission, Review, and Dismissal, or ARD committee. We like our acronyms. The location of ECI services are typically provided where the child lives, learns, and plays. And in ECSE services, this could be a variety of settings such as general or special education classrooms, community settings, or others. And then lastly, the cost of ECI services are based on a sliding scale. Unless the student is deaf or hard of hearing, deaf, blind, or has a visual impairment, these services are at no cost. And in ECI, evaluation, assessment, development of the child's IFSP, case management, and translation and interpreter services are provided at no cost to the family. All ECSE services are provided at no cost to the family because children are guaranteed a free, appropriate public education under Part B of IDEA. ECI focuses on supporting developmental milestones through family-centered services, while Part B shifts to providing a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. The transition from Part C to Part B marks a significant shift in service delivery, eligibility criteria, and educational settings. So what is the purpose of early childhood transition? It's to ensure that children who receive ECI services continue to receive the support they need as they enter preschool or other educational settings. This transition is not just a change in services. It's a carefully planned process that involves collaboration among families, early intervention providers, and LEAs. And the goal is to maintain continuation of services and support the child's developmental and educational progress without interruption. A well-coordinated transition process fosters trust between families and service providers, reduces stress, and ensures that children are placed in environments where they can thrive. When transitions are smooth, children are more likely to experience positive outcomes in their educational journey, setting a strong foundation for future success. Okay, circling back to the transition plan, the collaboration between ECSE staff, ECI providers, and families is essential to ensure that the transition plan is not just written, but also lived out in a way that supports each child's unique journey. The next transition activity I want to highlight for children who are potentially eligible for ECSE is the notification to the child's LEA. ECI must notify the local school district of the child's potential eligibility for Part B services. This notification serves as the initial referral for IDEA Part B services and allows the school district time to complete their required evaluation and enrollment activities before the child's third birthday. Here on the slide, you'll see a list of directory information, and I'll expand on that on the next slide. So in most instances, written parental consent is required before sharing a child's information with anyone outside of ECI. The notification to the LEA is different in that it doesn't require written parental consent, but it does allow the parent to opt out of the notification. At least 10 days before the ECI program notifies the LEA that a child may be eligible for Part B services, the ECI team must provide written notice to the child's parent. This notice includes 3 key pieces of information. First, it tells the parent what information will be shared with the LEA. This includes the information that was on the previous slide, which is the child's name and date of birth, parent's name, address, and phone number, the name of the service coordinator, and the child's home language. And only this information can be shared to the LEA with the notification. The parent must provide informed written consent to share any other information. Second, the notice will share the scheduled date when the LEA will be notified. And lastly, the notice will outline the parent's right to opt out of this disclosure in writing at any time up until the scheduled notification date. This process helps ensure that families are fully informed and have the opportunity to make decisions about how their child's information is shared during the transition to preschool services. All right, the next required activity for children who are potentially eligible for ECSE is the transition conference. The transition conference has the same required timeline as the transition plan. It must be completed no later than 90 days before a child's third birthday and no earlier than 9 months before the child's third birthday or when the child is 27 months old. A transition conference with the child's LEA is required for children who are potentially eligible for ECSE unless the parent declines the conference. With parental approval, ECI staff should also try to convene transition conferences with any additional community settings the child may transition to. The purpose of the transition conference is to talk about what services the child might receive through the school district once they turn 3. And here are a few key things to know. The meeting must be accessible and convenient for the family and all participants. ECI must send written notice to the family and the LEA at least 14 days in advance so everyone has time to plan and attend. If ECI doesn't invite both the family and the LEA, the transition conference doesn't meet federal requirements. And if the LEA doesn't attend but was properly notified, ECI still needs to hold this meeting to share information about the family, to share information with the family and update the child's transition plan if needed. Okay, so here on the slide, I'll pause for a bit so you can see who attends the transition conference and where the conference may be held. Okay, so what is discussed during the transition conference? The LEA staff will explain a number of things, such as their eligibility for ECSE, the differences between ECI and ECSE eligibility, and the fact that just because the child was enrolled in ECI and referred to the LEA, it doesn't mean the child will automatically be eligible for ECSE services. They'll also talk about ECSE or Part B service options. They'll talk about timelines, including key dates and actions, next steps, roles, and responsibilities. The ECI service coordinator will update the timelines discussed in the transition plan in the child's IFSP as needed. They'll also share the process for consenting to the evaluation to determine ECSE eligibility, and they'll share extended year services. If the LEA doesn't attend, ECI is responsible for explaining these topics to the family. Also, the LEA will obtain parental consent for the ECSC or Part B eligibility determination and may start discussing the child's current developmental status, strengths, areas of need, and current services. With informed written consent, ECI will share the child's ECI evaluation and assessment, IFSP, and other information with the child's LEA to help them with planning for the child's eligibility evaluation for ECSE services. Okay, so now let's talk about some other responsibilities the LEA has to ensure a smooth transition between ECI and ECSE. LEAs must work closely with ECI providers and families to share relevant information, understand the child's developmental history, and support family engagement and informed decision-making. If the child is transitioning from ECI to ECSE, the LEA must determine the child's eligibility and develop their IEP by their third birthday. So this means that the LEA must obtain informed written parental consent for the ECSE Part B eligibility determination process, and together with ECI personnel and the family, identify any gaps in assessment information needed to determine Part B eligibility, and decide who will be responsible for completing or gathering additional evaluation information. The ARD meeting is where the child's eligibility is discussed and where the committee develops the child's IEP. Parents must receive at least 5 school days notice before the committee meeting, and the ARD committee meeting must be scheduled at a mutually agreeable time and place. This ensures families can participate fully as equal members of the team. In the case of the child who is enrolled in ECI, at the request of the parent, the LEA will invite the ECI service coordinator or another ECI staff member to the initial ARD meeting to assist with the smooth transition of services. So under IDA Part B, one of the most important tasks is the development of a high-quality IEP during the ARD meeting. The IEP serves as a roadmap for the child's educational journey in ECSE. It's not just a compliance document, it's a personalized plan that reflects the child's unique strengths, needs, and developmental goals. And the IEP ensures that each child has access to a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment. That means we're always aiming to support children in settings where they can learn alongside their typically developing peers as much as possible. Now let's talk about what the LEA must provide to parents as part of this process. So first, the Notice of Procedural Safeguards outlines parents' legal rights under IDEA. Next, the Parent's Guide to the ARD process or ARD process helps families understand their role and what to expect. And lastly, the Overview of Special Education for Parents form is a quick reference to the special education process in Texas. And each of these resources are linked here on the slide. Okay, so what's next? ECI will continue to serve the child until their third birthday, even if the ARD committee already developed the child's IEP. This means that ECI will update the child's transition plan as needed if the parent wants to explore new options for services when the child turns 3. And it will continue to implement the plan steps and services in the transition plan. This can include supporting the parent and child to visit the new service setting and incorporating skills that the child may need in the new service setting during their ECI visits. ECI not only helps support the transition of the child, but also supports the parent's transition from ECI too. So this may mean connecting the parent to support groups and providing information about resources they may need after their child turns 3. And with parental consent, ECI will share requested information with the child's new service settings. ECI service coordinators will also attend the child's ARD meeting to provide support to the family. If you are concerned about a child's development and they are under age 3, refer the child to ECI. ECI can help a child transition to ECSE even if they are close to turning 3. If a child is referred to ECI less than 45 days from their 3rd birthday, with parental consent, ECI will refer the child to their LEA. And ECI will not determine eligibility for ECI or develop an IFSP. If you are concerned about a child's development and they are age 3 or older, refer the child to the LEA. Contact the special education director at your local school district for more information. You can ask, how do I request a special education evaluation? Okay, so now we've gone through the transition process from ECI to ECSE. And I'll stop here just to stay within the scope of our topic today. I do know the ECHO team is planning an upcoming webinar specifically on ECSE. And so we are near the end of my presentation, but I wanted to include some resources in here that you may find helpful. So first, I'll share that ECI has publications and resources that anyone can give parents and caregivers to increase their knowledge of their child's developmental milestones and help them engage in following their child's development. ECI publishes resources for families. Publishes resources for families which are offered at to the public at no cost, and most of these publications are available in English and Spanish. So here on the slide, you'll see this is our ECI poster that's really great for posting in childcare classrooms or offices. And you can order by following the ECI materials ordering link on the next slide. Here on this slide, we have 2 ECI publications. The Serving Babies and Toddlers brochure provides a general overview about ECI and available services. How's Your Baby provides a developmental checklist that works as a really great reference tool for parents and can be used for having those discussions with parents or caregivers regarding their child's development. And again, you can order any of these publications via the HHSC ECI website by accessing the materials ordering link, setting up your account, and placing an order for publications. And the QR code here on the slide takes you directly to our materials ordering link page. Also, just pointing out that ECI does have a specific publication that focuses on transition out of ECI called Beyond ECI. This handbook helps families prepare for transition from ECI to other programs or school settings. ECI's website is available in English and Spanish. There's information for families and providers, access to a library with audio, visual, and print materials, a resource guide, and then links to videos to help parents and caregivers become familiar with the program. And here on the slide is a huge list of resources specific to transition from ECI to ECSE or just ECSE in general. All right. And I'll take any questions, or I'll leave it to the ECHO team to direct me on what to do next.
Thank you so much, Gabby. And we'll make sure to be sending out these slides to everyone for references, so then that way you all have access to these resources. If you do have any questions for Gabby, I do encourage you to post them in the chat. I do want to make sure we have enough time for a case presentation. But before that, we'll go ahead and move on to announcements for today. Karen, could you please? Thank you. As a reminder, please don't forget to claim credit using your TechPets account and scanning the QR code on the screen. We'll also be sharing that link via chat and email for you all to have for your records as well. Next slide. If you're interested in presenting a case, please feel free to use the link as well in the chat to send us that case submission. If not, feel free to always email echoadmin@uthscsa.com or always chat me during the session. We'll make sure to get that squared away for you. Next slide. And join us for the next Texas Dishes Echo on Friday, October 10th for a presentation on early childhood special education. Next slide. And as a reminder, after today's case presentation, we will move on to breakout rooms for the case discussion. Then we'll be meeting back in the main session where a representative from each breakout room will share a summary of what was discussed. Thank you, Karen. All right, Julia, once Karen gets that case presentation going, feel free to take it away.
Hi, let me see. There. I hope you can hear me, but I'm Julia Von Cannon, and I am going to be presenting our case. This is the case of a 4-year-old male child that we have in our center. And you can move to the next slide because it will be easier like that. All right, so relevant background of this child is family has split custody of him. This family decided that it would be better for the children to move households during the week. 2 days they stay with mom, 2 days they stay with dad, and so on. So they're moving households every other day pretty much. The child is the younger of 3 children. Um, I already said the thing of the house. They are very emotional. The 3 of them are like that, but in particular, this child, he deals with very deep emotions. Partially is from his age, but partially is because of, I believe there's a lot of change going on every week for them. The older brother and this child seem to have traces of ADHD, but they have not been diagnosed, and the parents are not interested in diagnosing them, at least as of now. After the divorce of the parents, it was obvious to us that they needed some kind of counseling to regulate emotions and to deal with the family dynamics, but nothing was provided by the parents, or they didn't seek for any help, to be honest. You can move to the next slide. So this child specifically gets physical and aggressive in the classroom. He shows signs of oppositional behaviors and aggression. The one thing he loves to do is throw things. Anything that he has in his hand, he will throw. Even though we have created spaces for him to throw in a safely manner, he would just throw things to everybody and around. He screams whenever he doesn't get his way, climbs on furniture, runs, even when not told not to do so. Hits the teachers. He's very aggressive. When confronted, he moves into verbal aggression. I'm going to choke you, hit your face, hit you, punch you, kill you, anything. Your poo-poo head, poo-poo face, smell like poo-poo. He finds it very amusing and thinks it's very funny when confronted. Does not correlate the consequences with the actions, even though with every action that he does, we do get one, like my rule for him is one verbal warning. If he doesn't redirect his behavior, then we sit down with him as a formal timeout type of thing, but he's next to the teacher. And normally after that doesn't work, he comes to the front, but it has become very increasingly more difficult to deal with him. You can move to the next slide. I think I have another one. So he can be very kind. So we do encourage him whenever he has a good day. We make sure that he's aware of the good days, when he's a good citizen, when he collaborates in the classroom, where he does what he's told within the limits. I have realized lately that especially close to nap time, he obviously he's overly tired and therefore he will act out. There's like a time in the day when we know that he very likely will act up. We have used a reward chart. We have used a treasure box. He holds an ice pack for whenever friends get hurt. As a consequence, he comes to the office when he gets out of control in the classroom. We call mom, we call dad, and nothing moves him to what is right. Even in the midst of calming down and everything, even if mom says anything, that nothing will change. And sometimes it has gotten to the point where we have to call the parents to pick him up because it's out of our hands to be able to help them. So the questions that I have, I think it's the next slide. So have any of you found any effective way with dealing with highly emotional children to help them regulate their emotions? Like I said before, one of the things that this child struggles with is not being able to keep his hands to himself. He throws toys all the time, swings his hands to hurt his friends, thinking it's funny. Do you have any strategies that can help our teachers deal with these behaviors in an effective way? As I said before, they have sit down next to him whenever he misbehaves, send him to the front whenever he doesn't want to listen after multiple attempts. Do you know any ways to help him process his emotions? He's only 4, so it can be difficult finding things that could help him at that age, but we've tried many things, like punching a pillow, whenever he's emotional, like overly emotional. I encourage him whenever he comes here to the office, whenever he's completely out of it, I tell him just sit down and let's drink some water together. And when he finally does it, obviously he calms down, but then as he starts developing those emotions again, he completely gets out of control. So anyway, I don't know. I would like to hear what you guys have to say and your experience.
And thank you so much, Julia. As a reference, the
Mhm.
questions have been posted in the chat for everyone. Does anyone have any questions for Julia before we go into breakout rooms?
I have a question, Julia. What
Yes.
strategies have you used to get the parents to be involved in his
Mm.
day-to-day schedule as far as having difficulty with his behavior? I would highly recommend that part of him being in your program to be enrolled is that they're receiving services for him, even if that includes providing them just, minimal training, handouts,
Mhm.
completing weekly logs on, or just even a little sign-in sheet. How did he do the weekend before he comes in on Monday? What kind of
Mhm.
challenges did he have? Just some kind of follow-up for you to be able to be informed on what's going on with the family. That way it keeps them accountable and it's going to help you a lot as well and your teachers.
That's
So
very good. That's very good. Thank
just a suggestion. Thank you.
you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Julia, do you know when talking with the parents if this behavior is also happening at home?
So what happens at home, it's interesting because whenever he has behaviors like this, I feel like there's not a consistency, even though they know what we're doing here. Obviously, as parents send their kiddos here and then they go home overly they're overly tired, and they want to rest as well. So the easy thing is just we're just gonna give him what he wants. But it seems to me that the amount of behaviors is less at home. I do believe it could be stemming from a attention seeking pattern, in regards to having multiple children in the facility. We don't his classroom is not that big. It's only 10 children of ages 4 and 1 5-year-old, I believe. But I do believe that a lot of it is because of the inconsistency of the parents. I think the parents are at the wit's end. They try different things, but they are not consistent in the things they're trying. Whether it's for example a reward system. If he has good days, then one thing that the mom was doing, I think, is if he had a good week, then he gets to choose what they do Friday night, whether it's going to have a little ice cream or something small, something not that for them going to the Dollar General is super fun, something like that. But it has not been consistent enough for them to be able to see, because of the switching of households. It's not like every weekend she's there with mom to see that behavior change, I will say. Um, so I think that's part of our challenges, even though we talk many times with mom and dad, trying to get to a plan that kind of making it where it's kind of across the board is kind of difficult to keep up with it because of the multiple changes. Mhm.
Okay, thank you so much, Julia, and everyone who asked a question. We'll go ahead and move into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back to the main session to discuss together. All right, welcome back, everyone. We'll go ahead and go around and share everyone's discussion for today. I'll go ahead and share mine since I'm already unmuted. One of the first, or actually one of the recommendations that was offered by the participants today is to offer some morning check-ins for the little one, just to kind of set the tone, figure out how they're feeling for the day, kind of gets, it'll allow you to get an idea of, what to expect, but also, what are some areas that we can kind of start pivoting to make sure the child does have a better day. Another recommendation is to allow them to feel their emotions. Maybe if they do need to talk, offer that safe space for them. However, if maybe they're needing to get a little bit more energy out. Sharon mentioned that she's also had a punching bag in her classroom or her space to kind of allow them to get some of that energy out, some of those emotions. So maybe just trying to come up with other ways where, some of those physical behavior and energy can be pivoted to a different direction. And lastly, that consistency is key, making sure that you are sharing the same information with both mom and dad. That way, all the behaviors at home can be addressed the right way and they can be corrected the right way. Dr. Mandel, I'll pass it on to you.
Thanks. In our group, we talked a lot about consistency as well, and the recognition that the child care center right now is the child's most consistent environment, and becoming hyper focused on the consistency and even doing those daily check-ins with him about this is what's going to happen now, and this is what's going to happen. This is what we have control over. A couple of people also brought up bringing in a parent coach to help with you guys, to help the parents of, then it's not coming from you talking to the parents, but you have this coach coming in and helping like talk about what this is doing to the kids, what's bringing them, helping them see, helping the parents see what's going on, and bringing in a parenting coach. The other thing that was brought up is like, I love this, a dance party that brings in some of the emotional regulation into the dance party and having a really fun way to work it through. The other thing that our group talked about was like what to do when he's dysregulated. And so a couple of people brought up taking him out of the dysregulation by walking him around the building, not focusing on his behavior, but let's just bring him down. Let's bring him down and bring him back into a regulated space. With the hands, somebody talked about, like, of course, every kid is different, but one person talked about bringing in that she has somebody who can't keep his hands to himself as well. And she has a special fidget that's just for him, that when she sees it happening, he gets the fidget. And then you just, I loved what you were saying, Carolyn, about you just see him starting to bring himself back down with working through the fidget. But that's something we all acknowledge too as individual, and finding that one thing that kind of brings him back in. Faith, you want to go?
Yes, and then I'll wrap us up. So the things that were not already mentioned that our group had mentioned was not just the visual schedule within the classroom, but then also creating visual schedules for at home that are the same and consistent across households, but maybe are color coded differently per the house, so the child has that awareness of what household they're going to be at, what's coming. Also having the space to be outside as the weather permits and run around, allowing the child to, get out the energy, maybe while everyone else is playing, challenge the little one to run some laps or to do some big body exercises to be able to get out some of the energy. A resource was mentioned, the show on PBS called Daniel. They have a song about regulating emotions and blowing bubbles and being able to teach not only the kids, but also the adults how to model emotional regulation. And a great suggestion was given of recommending to the parents of setting aside one-on-one time with each of their children. Within both households, so that's 10 or 15 minutes of uninterrupted time with each child where they can talk about their day, they can spend that uninterrupted time with their parents. And then as far as wrapping up the session goes, so much great information was shared, not only in the breakout rooms about behavioral regulation, but so much great information about ECI. Love that the real big focus is building moments for learning and connection within to everyday moments. So it's not just, the big life changes, but it's how are you building in time within play, within feeding, within those everyday moments that parents have with their children. It is a service that is available statewide, really supporting families within their natural environment within a coaching model. And that parent choice and parent advocacy is a really big component of ECI services, but also that transition into ECSE services. And I know we'll talk a lot more about special ed services when we come back together next month.
We will. Thank you so much, Faith. No need to make that announcement again for everyone, but I will share that the post-session survey and the TechPet links are in the chat. Thank you everyone for spending an extra 5 minutes with us. With that, we'll go ahead and end today's session. Happy Friday, have a good weekend, and please expect an email with all the resources next week. Thank you, everyone.